Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicki Thompson, the Senior Director for Workforce Growth Partnerships at TPMA, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Welcome to part one of our four-part Veterans webinar series. This series is designed to spark meaningful conversations and inspire action around one key idea. Veterans bring incredible value to our communities when we're ready to support their journey. Today's session is titled The Veteran Journey, What Every Community Should Know. Or like we say, the exit ramp matters. We'll be exploring the critical transition from military to civilian life, which can be full of potential and challenges if the right systems aren't in place. This session lays the groundwork for the rest of the series. Subsequent topics will explore how to make communities veteran ready, how to connect veterans to meaningful careers, and the last session will be how to build long-term support systems for veterans and their families. Please be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A box as we go through today's webinar. And if we have time at the end, we're going to answer those live. If we run out of time, we will answer them, but it will be via email. So let's get started. I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. Victoria Molnar is the North Central Veteran Engagement Manager at INVETS and is a U.S. Air Force veteran. Gary Allen is the Workforce Development and Administrator at the Ohio Department of Veterans Services, currently serving in the Ohio National Guard, and is a U.S. Air Force veteran. Tim Hill, who we were having some technical difficulties, I'm not sure if he dropped off or not, if he's able to get back on. He's the local veteran employment representatives from Region 4, Indiana, with the Department of Workforce Development, and is a U.S. Army and Indiana National Guard veteran. And our last finalist is Bill Kiefer. He is the co-founder and executive director of Veteran Career Journey and president and chief advisor at Kiefer and Associates. He is a U.S. Army veteran. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
So let's hear from each of them as we explore the exit ramp into the civilian life, and one of the most important moments that we can support. So Victoria, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. So considering the transition from military to civilian life, can you describe your transition from military to civilian life? Like what challenges, what surprised you the most, those kind of things?
Yes, well, thank you for having me on this panel today. I'm excited to talk with people and hopefully educate them a little bit on what we went through. So my transition was a little unique because I was able to see it firsthand from when I was married. My ex-husband now, but my husband at the time retired 2 years prior to me. So I got to see a little bit of some of the struggles that I knew to prevent when I was getting out. But what is the hard part is everyone who gets out of the military, they leave and they take all that knowledge with them. So every new person that gets out of the military has to go through those same hiccups that the person before them went through. So knowing exactly how to out process what you want to do. The challenging part for me was I had 20 years of military experience. I joined 2 weeks after high school, and that's all I knew. So I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up and got out of the military. We were always told like what our next step was and what we kind of knew what we were doing. So when I had to think, oh my God, what am I going to actually do to make a paycheck to support my 2 children and put food on the table, is I had to really, really think about what I wanted to do, quality of life versus quality of money, where I wanted to be, and then focus my efforts on that. Because before I never really had to think about it. I always knew my next step.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. Gary, what about you?
Yeah, so my particular journey, I actually got off active duty in 2011. And I was lucky because all I did was just move back in with mom and dad. I remember I paid my car off just to be on the safe side. And I was still in, the same house I grew up in, and it's still in my same bedroom. So I was definitely lucky in that regard. But I was, of course, driven, motivated, ready to take on the world. I could have been the CEO of Coca-Cola. Like I was that fired up and ready to go. But the thing is, during my transition, that was frustrating. It was during 2011 when I got off active duty initially. The recession was still going on. So you have a bunch of companies, they're already not hiring, so they're certainly not going to, be focused on doing anything for veterans or any other particular group during that time because they're trying to rebound and get back into the black instead of staying in the red like
Hmm.
many companies have been at the time. The thing that really um, surprised me the most is you kind of had an impression that people understood what veterans brought to the table. Um, by this point, I was an E4. I had just signed up and gone into the reserves, and I had some college background, and I was a junior non-commissioned officer at that point. And it was quite surprising how, you apply for jobs or go to interviews, they didn't really understand what you brought to the table. So that was something that was quite frustrating during that time period. Now, we have taken steps to get better about that since then, because and now when I say 2011, it sounds like the olden days, but it still was a very frustrating process because I had to take
Yeah.
everything one step at a time. It was like, all right, get registered for college here, do this, do that. There was even those challenges when I was going through college, believe it or not. I'm not going to call out the major university who did not have a program set up at that time to assist a transitioning veteran who has a GI Bill
Yes.
and the grades to get in. I'm not going to call them out today, but they have a program now, but they didn't even have anything set up when I got back
Yeah.
to Columbus.
And that reminds me, Gary, there'll be some follow-up questions too that are going to talk about what were the tools that were available and what worked and that kind of thing. So hold those thoughts a little bit because there's
Absolutely.
some good stuff there. And thank you, Tim, for coming back. I see you. I see you here. So,
I made
Tim,
it.
this next
Yes,
question's for you. Your timing's perfect. So,
absolutely.
Tim, what were the most significant gaps in support or information during your transition process?
So, like Gary said, I actually transitioned back in 2010 was my first transition from active duty, um, actually into the National Guard from civilian into civilian life National Guard, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. We did, we transitioned from Camp Atterbury here in Indiana, so we didn't have a whole lot of resources there, which I wish we would have had. The biggest gaps in support, I would say, would be that there wasn't a whole lot of let's say JVS. There weren't people like myself that were um, at this transitioning period to help shorten that gap between becoming or coming off of active duty and then becoming a civilian or transitioning into the Indiana National Guard, so that they can help you with that, finding that job, or if
Mhm.
they know of any jobs that are available. Um, just to help you get your foot in any doors that are open. So
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. So we've learned a lot so far about the transition because it's really Victoria's, your experience was so different because you'd already had an experience with somebody who had been in it before. And so then you're coming out thinking different. And Gary's like full on ready to go. And, Tim, you're talking about how there were some gaps, but then you were able to find some way to solve those. And we'll talk more about that. So, Bill, what do you wish your community or employer better understood about the transition experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I got out, I had no idea. I was on the '04 promotion list and I went through a divorce. So it kind of, in hindsight, to go, sometimes you choose to transition and sometimes transition happens to you. So you're entering a work world you've never been involved in as a, professional adult, will say. And you're coming in not knowing what you want or how to do it or where to go. And maybe you have some resources now. I certainly didn't when I got out. It was longer ago than 2010. Um, and I also found that businesses and communities weren't really sure what to do with veterans. Okay. They didn't, there's always, unfortunately, been bias and prejudice. We're all order takers and, all we do is follow mindlessly. And I think that mindset comes a lot of times from folks. They kind of watch the movies or they heard the horror stories from basic training. I can tell you, I've been in a variety of leadership positions, deployed and non-deployed on garrison. And the last thing I want are non-thinking robots. I needed soldiers that could think and do. And I think that's a misconception, a bias that employers don't have. I think the other thing is that employers, folks that are dealing with hiring, they're busy people. There's a lot going on, right?
Sure.
And paying attention to the folks that are maybe inbound to the company or candidates might not be their first priority in all cases, right? but I think they get too busy to think outside the box sometimes. I've led talent acquisition teams in Fortune 500 companies. I know people get busy and you bring something new and out of the box that's unfamiliar. They're going, yep, great idea. But unless it's mandated, I'm too busy doing what I'm doing. Okay. So, there's 175,000 veterans roughly that transition out every year. They come with a variety of skill sets. They're not all trigger pullers. I mean, there's logistics folks in IT and military police, HR specialists, accountants, phlebotomists, doctors,
Yes.
lawyers,
Yeah.
hundreds of different skill categories that could be a great fit if the company knows what they want and are willing to go out and test the waters in a new talent pool of highly qualified, capable people. Our
Yeah.
veterans bring the behavioral characteristics that all employers want: teamwork, focus on work, resilience, problem solving, good assessment, a bias towards action, all those other things. All we got to do is tap into that community, present ourselves in a way that's attractive to those veterans, and have some idea of what those veterans are saying. But 93%
Yeah.
of the population never served in uniform. So we've got a gap we need to bridge here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because we will be talking in some of our upcoming series specifically about some of those things. In just a few minutes, we are going to talk about translating that military experience and what that could look like. So, so hold on to your thoughts there because I know you have a lot of them, and we want to make sure that everybody gets to hear them. But Gary, I have a question for you because we started talking a little bit about the tools and the programs, and so we know that there are planning tools and programs such as SkillBridge that exist to assist in that transition. Were you aware of those programs and planning tools before you separated? And if so, how helpful were they in preparing you for the civilian employment?
Well, during the time when I was getting out in 2011, I actually, so I was stationed in Spokane, Washington at the time. So I was not aware of SkillBridge, believe it or not. We all went through the transition assistance program, and it keeps flopping between who runs it, between the Department of Defense and the Department of Labor. So I don't know which version of training I went through, but it was the standard, wear this color suit, don't wear this tie because you're going to suck all the energy out the room, all of that sort of thing on how to be during a job interview. Um, so yeah, I was not aware of that, and I kind of, I guess to reiterate, I got out and it was just like move back in with mom and dad and go and figure it out, and kind of go from there. Especially because the time period, with the recession going on, we were coming out of it, but it was still there. So I really just was not aware of SkillBridge at the time. Now, on a positive note, what we're doing at the Ohio Department of Veteran Services, we have a program called Veteran Talent Attraction. We're partnering with Jobs Ohio, and we're going around to military installations all over the country promoting this initiative. It's called Find Your Ohio. So anyone interested, it's called findyourohio.com/military. And we're promoting that link. And what'll happen is we connect you with employers who are looking for your skill set, and this is military focused and military spouses as well. So this is a newer program, but steps have been taken since then because I don't want to sound
Yeah.
doom and gloom, which is why
Sure.
I'm doing so.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Well, Tim, let me ask you that same question and see what your perspective is like. Were you aware of the programs and planning tools before you separated, and how helpful were they in helping you prepare?
So SkillBridge, I don't even think it may have been in its infancy when I transitioned out in 2010. So I did not actually hear anything about SkillBridge. We were given information on our local American Job Centers or Work Ones in our area, and definitely we were told to go seek out information in our counties. So that did help quite a bit. But when it comes to SkillBridge, yeah, that I don't even know if it existed, to be honest with you, in 2010.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, what advice would you give to service members who are just starting to explore that transition and utilizing tools?
Yeah, it's really important. I tell this to everybody I coach, and it has been thousands of folks. You have to start planning for your transition now. You can't cram for the transition exam, okay? So start now. You just put the uniform on. You know the uniform is going to come off someday, maybe after your first term of service, or maybe a career later. start thinking now about what good looks like somewhere in the future. As you consider that, as you're getting closer and it's more real, I think there's three things you got to understand and pay attention to. You got to know you. Who are you and how do you describe yourself? You got to know what you're bringing to the party. What are your passions, your capabilities, the realities of your situation? Okay. And how do you define success? What does good look like? The job, the nature of the work, the geography, whatever those criteria are. A
Mhm.
way to help do that is to try to take some of the emotion out of transition and think of this as just really a big problem solving exercise. You've got a problem to solve. How do you identify the problem? What are the criteria by which you're going to do it? Further, you got to build your network. You got to build your network. Otherwise, you're going to be really lonely. This is not like when you transition into the military, where there's structure and process and people all around you to cause success. As soon as you say thank you very much, you're out and you got that 214 in your hand. Unless you built a network, you're on your own. Okay. I'll
That's
also
really
suggest,
interesting.
go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I want to see this. Two more things. One, you got dual focus. You got to focus on getting prepared and getting known. If you can organize your thoughts that way, it helps a lot. And the last thought is remember that transition is a space unto itself. It's not where you've been, it's not where you're going to land. It's kind of that murky, swampy land in between with its own people and processes and tools and techniques that you really do have to learn, and you can't learn them overnight. So start thinking about transition early on.
Yeah, Bill, that made me think about, and so Victoria, I have a question for you just to get you in this round with the tools and that kind of thing. What role did mentorship or peer support play in helping you utilize tools or transition resources? So how did that connection with other people help you?
So mentorship is huge, just like he said, building that network, right? I always think back to one of my colleagues who says networking is one letter off from not working, right? You have to be out there. You have to put yourself out there. Um, I did not know what I wanted to do. I talked to other senior leaders when they were almost about a year or two out because you have to plan ahead of time. We shared calendars so we could put down like terminal leave dates and what our game plan on paper was minimum a year out. But then I started looking at skill bridge options. The first time I ever heard of skill bridge was when I was a section chief, and one of a staff sergeant came to me. I was like, "Hey, I'm getting out. I want to do skill bridge," and we are all like, "What is skill bridge?" And that was in 2018. So like it had just become very popular, and then it was like a known thing. So when I was preparing to get out, I was like, let me look at Skillbridge. I looked at Hiring Our Heroes, tried to network with them a little bit. I saw some of their partners. There was something that said in vets. And I was like, well, in is Indiana. Cool. I wonder what this is. So I looked into LinkedIn. I reached out to Jerry. Jerry was part of InVets. I saw what it was about. He told me to get with Dana. Dana was a retired Army guy, right? And he helped me kind of navigate what I wanted to do when I got out. So
Mhm.
mentorship is huge. And that's why now with like InVets, who I now luckily get to work with, we help mentor people that are getting out as well, transitioning out of the military, because we've been in their shoes, we've been in their boots, right? We've literally went through that process. Just like Find My Ohio, they're helping military getting out, right? The boot is now for Louisiana. They have KY Valor, Mission, Wisconsin. A lot of these states are coming up and realizing how much mentorship helps veterans reacclimate into the civilian world. Because you're right, we get out, we think, oh, everyone's going to want to hire us. We have these great skills, but then it's a shock when we get out because it's like, how do we show them our skills when we don't have that certificate of the state to show that we've done this job? Like I was a mechanic, right? I could do anything you want on an airplane, but I didn't have my AMP. But I knew I didn't want to work on airplanes, So those are just kind of those examples. But like you put me on an airplane, I can definitely fix it. You know what I mean?
So,
So
yeah. So let me ask you, because that transitions perfectly into like the next set of questions around translating military experience, right? So how did you go about translating that to the civilian resume or job interview? Like, were there things that helped or hindered in being able to do that?
yes, and that's where I leaned on my mentorship because I was that typical person. I was getting out. I had a 5-page resume. I had my picture on top, you know, a very pretty resume. And they're like, oh, no, 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 no. Needs to be no more than 2 pages. I'm like, how am I supposed to fit 20 years in 2 pages? And so then I learned about how you have to tailor it per jobs, you know. And when I went into my first interview, I didn't know it was an interview. So I wasn't prepared. I thought it was a conversation. And then I come find out, oh, they're actually asking me all these questions. And I had to do it off the top of my head, you know. So being prepared and not using terms and acronyms and jargon that not everyone knows. Like if I say NCO, not everyone knows that that's like mid-tier supervisor level, you know. And if I say B1, not everyone knows that's a bomber aircraft, you know. So there's different ways that you have to put it on paper, because Bob over here, whoever is reading your resume, doesn't have time. Like Bill was saying, they're so busy. If they had the time to question everything and Google it all, you know, that would be great, but they don't. So we have to make sure that we use those sites and those links and those mentors to help us bring it back down to civilian terms.
Vicki, can
Yeah,
I
that's
jump
a
in
really
here
good
on
point.
this? Can I jump in on
Yeah,
this one
sure.
real
Go ahead,
quick?
Bill.
So I screwed this up when I got out. I was a logistics officer. So when I'm meeting with employers, they go, oh, what you do in the military? And I proudly said I was a 90 Alpha 5 Papa 3 Romeo. They don't know what that is. So I thought I'd help. I said I was a tactical multifunctional logistics officer, nuclear, biological, and chemical certified and airborne qualified. And they went, and? So when I'm working with people to coach them, I go, it's not just what you did in military terms. You got to listen to the question that they're really asking. Because the question they're asking isn't what did you do in the military? The question they're asking is what did you do in the military that's relevant to my needs? So as you network and as you work with folks, as you learn more about the industry, the company, the jobs, pay attention to what they're asking for and get ready to answer their asks.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. I don't, Gary or Tim, do you have anything to add that even when you consider like things such as like programs that might have reframed your experiences or, you know, coaches and those kind of things?
Oh yeah, the second time I transitioned out of active duty, actually, it was coming off of Title 10 Active Guard Reserve. I was able to get connected with JVSG through the American Job Centers, and that actually worked out really well. They gave me a lot of the resources that I had no idea existed for any transitioning service member or veteran in general. So yes, working with JVSG and through the American Job Centers was a huge help for me. And also Ivy Tech. I don't know if you guys know, but Ivy Tech has a veteran service rep in there within the schools, and they help a lot with the educational transitions as well.
Yeah, for those they're on that don't know Ivy Tech is the community college system in Indiana, and they've been doing a lot actually with military credit for prior learning. So, yeah, thank you, Gary. Anything else on this topic as far as translating military experience?
Yes, and this is kind of what Bill was alluding to. Basically, you want to just show them what you are bringing to the party. And actually got a lot of help from my mom um, with in regards to that because she has a HR background, but it was just translating my skill set into what that company or that organization is looking for. Because I came out with the same skills. I was medical field, actually a dental tech, and had absolutely no interest in going back into that field. I took that job partially because I didn't trust the government, and I was like, there was a couple other jobs I could have done, but I was like, all right, let me go the safe route in this situation. But yeah, that then obviously that translates to more medical stuff, and I had no interest in going that route at all. So I'd really hone in on the customer service, HIPAA, so I know how to shut up, record keeping, that sort of thing. I did, and also just essentially following orders as well,
Sure.
following processes, because that's what that job does involve.
Okay. Well, that makes me let's flip that around a little bit. And so,
Yes.
Bill, I have a question for you about what can employers or those career coaches do to better understand and recognize military acquired skills?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's an important one to help close that culture gap that stands between employers and veterans. First, I think employers need to recognize you got to get beyond the good wishes, the thank yous, and the memorials. Those are appreciated, but those are cursory social norms. They are not necessarily helpful to get people prepared to succeed in the civilian work world. One of the things they can do is appeal to a veteran's sense of service. That 1% that enlists in joins the military, enlisted or otherwise, they have a sense of service. Okay. And if you're an employer, make the case for what your needs are and connect the dots, how what they bring might help serve those needs. Next, be clear. Our veterans appreciate clarity. What is the goal? What is the process? What's the feedback mechanism? How is performance going to be measured? Give them that feedback, because I've worked with thousands of veterans, and I tell you, we all want that feedback. What's my mission? How am I going to get ready for it? How am I going to know if I'm succeeding? And then what? Training, and that leads to the next point. Training, development, career management are expected. If you come in as an E1, you know roughly what it takes to become a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5, and similar with the W's and the O's, right? If your company doesn't have that, if it's not that rigorous, if it's not that clear, at least tell the folks that are coming in, it isn't going to be that clear. Here's generally how a career pattern, and I got all kinds of stories for this if we have more time. Just be clear and honest with them, okay? They're pretty adaptable folks. What they're used to is one thing, what the situation is. They are very capable of flexing in different circumstances. And finally, I think on this point is you got to be where the veterans are. If your company, if your community wants to attract veterans to, then you got to be where they are. Have some kind of presence, like Gary was talking about, on the installations where the veterans are. Let's say, for example, you need folks with high-tech skills. Go around the Navy bases, go around the Air Force bases. Okay, there was a study out by Harvard years ago, I think in 2014, that said they did a study on where the employers can find the veterans for the kinds of jobs they want. And if you have technical equipment focused business needs, you want to go to the Air Force and the Navy, because their mission depends on the equipment. Not that the other ones don't, but if you need general management, general leadership, good performance, that's a blend of people and equipment and process, you can go to any of them, but you could also find great success with the Army and the Marine Corps, because they are more people required. And Coast Guard, Space Force are in there on the tech side, equipment side. So anyway, long answer to a great question.
Well, here's the thing. So that really, and I think that everybody, I'd like you all to give me some feedback on this. So that really goes back to moving, looking at integration into those broader systems, right? So a few things here, and you can all chime in where you feel best. Like, do you feel that veterans are adequately represented or considered in like public systems, like the workforce development, higher ed, public, why or why not? Like, that's one part of my question for you all. What's been your experience navigating those systems post-service? What worked and what didn't? And then finally, what policies or partnerships would you like to see in place to support smoother integration into those types of systems? So that is for all of you. It's kind of like a free-for-all. So who wants to start?
Let me dive in, because I'm rarely accused of being shy. I think levels of community engagement with veterans varies from location to location. My experience is those areas that have a larger percentage of active duty populations or big reserve centers, they're more engaged with service members and veterans. It's a bigger part of the population, okay, because people are already there. Beyond that, I think the level of engagement, I live in Elmore, Ohio. We're east of Toledo. There's a couple of Reserve and National Guard units, but the military presence from an active part of the community is pretty low. Very different than if you're at like Fort Bragg or Fort Bliss or wherever, right? I think the other issue is how our systems engage with veterans. I happen to also be a county veteran service commissioner in the county I live in. The VSOs, we provide governance for the Veteran Service Office in our county, right? I am really glad that our Ohio Revised Code Charter mission is to help those veterans that are in need. But I think to better engage with the community is get them before they're in need. Get these folks as they come to your community before they become in crisis, or they have health issues, or there's financial issues. So I think there's from a system standpoint, for us as communities, community leaders at state, county, municipal level, whatever, to get contact with, have a presence with, and try to make an impact earlier on veterans so we can help them in their journey to help themselves, as opposed to being there when things fall apart. I was
Great.
going to
Yeah,
say
that's
something
great.
else, but we'll call it falling apart.
Go ahead, Victoria.
So yeah, I was just kind of going to piggyback a little bit and say like he was right on the money when companies want to hire veterans from the soft skills and the loyalty that they bring and the adaptability, right? But businesses need to understand too that if they want to bring in that talent attraction, if they're getting out of the military, they're on a time frame. They need to know what they're going to be doing. If they only have 3 months and sometimes they're going to be waiting 6 months for the ad to close. I know I'm exaggerating numbers here, but some companies are longer than others.
Sure.
But if they want to take those chances, they need to have that open communication and be willing to at least reach out and ask a couple questions, even if it's just an email to that veteran. I know sometimes applications don't have a button to say, oh, I'm a veteran, or click here, or referred by whatever company it is, but connecting, if you really want to get with those positions to get veterans to fill them, connecting with organizations like InVets and DWD and Workforce and Meet My Ohio or Find My Ohio and KY Valor, that's where we can have those conversations and help say, oh, these are the jobs you have. Look, I have 5 veterans that would fit this bill. You just need to at least please reach out to them, because then if they have the conversations, they don't just keep getting these auto rejects from the system, right? We have people that have public health experience, just like they were saying they had dental tech experience, right? We may not have that certification, but maybe getting that OJ, that hands-on training in the civilian workforce, and then they can go test out of it because they've had that background, taking those chances, and just open communication. I know they're busy, but if they're trying to change that, we will bring a lot to the table and we can adapt, and that's where those partnerships come into play. Which
Yeah,
every state.
that certification issue is huge, Victoria. Whether you're an 88 mic truck driver, a dental tech, whatever, an EMT, whatever it is, huge issue that I know a lot of states are working on. But man, when that progress happens, we have to have a way to have communication out there so our veterans know it's there. Having it's one thing, got to get through that hurdle, but then sharing that information so it opens opportunities and so it presents qualified employee candidates to employers. Huge issue, huge issue.
Yeah. Tim, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I guess this is more wishful thinking for how I would want things to go start working, but for policies and procedures within employers that are looking to hire veterans, I would like to see them become more veteran ready as opposed to veteran friendly. And I got that from Kelly Friend. She dropped that on me, and I'm reusing it because it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
But to have those companies be more veteran ready, as because I work with a lot of veterans that have barriers to employment. They need to go to the VA once or twice a month, or some of them have PTSD and will become overwhelmed and need to take time off, or need to get a breather. And if we can get businesses to fully understand that and try to get policies and procedures put into their or through to their hiring authorities, so that our veterans aren't getting pointed at jobs for having too many VA appointments or losing jobs because of that. That would be something wonderful. I would love to see that in place.
Yeah, and so Tim keeps throwing things out there that I have to explain. So let me explain a couple. Let me explain a couple of things. First of all, Kelly works for TPMA. She is the person who was able to. This is her brainchild, right? I mean, she was able to put all this together, and she will be on future webinars with us. And to Tim's point about the difference between being veteran friendly, and Kelly likes to say, here's your free cup of coffee, as opposed to veteran ready. That is the topic that we're going to have for our next webinar. So for those of you that are listening in and watching in, you'll want to make sure that you come back in a few weeks when we have that. So to round out this integration into broader systems, Gary, did you have anything you wanted to add? I see that you put in the chat, the Find Your Ohio.
Oh, yes, for sure. So I will go ahead and cite an example of an organization that actually has done a good job of representing veterans. As a matter of fact, the Ohio State Highway Patrol. they have actually had a veteran in all ranks of their organization, and the highest rank that they have is their superintendent, which is also a colonel, is what his or her rank is referred to. So they've had a veteran in every single rank in that organization, which is fantastic. And we actually highlighted them last year for this program called In-Demand Jobs Weeks. Now, veterans, I think because of the nature of operations, the way our population is, less and less companies are going to be encountering veterans are not going to be as represented as well because when you look at like the numbers in the participation from like World War II all the way to today, we have a way smaller military, and it's like that by design. So less companies and the general population is just not going to encounter veterans as much unless you live in a location where you are near a military installation. But I would like to see more representation though with programs like with troops to teachers. I'm not sure what's going on with that, for example. We do need veterans in education because especially when you become an NCO or junior officer,
Mhm.
you're around a lot of younger people. You may not realize it, but you could be a good fit for being in education, for example, because you know how to deal with young people and lead them and mentor them, for example. So so to answer that is a complicated question. So by nature, because of the way the military is now and how we have been smaller through the years, you're not going to it's going to cause there to not be a strong representation of
Mhm.
military personnel because of that.
Yeah, and you have all tapped a little bit into, and this is the last round of our questions before we get some questions answered. But thinking about considering like community and policy level action, Bill, I'll have you start off this round. What can local communities do now to better prepare service members before they separate?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The first thing they got to do is actually don't try and half step this, okay? The first thing they got to do is dedicate the effort. If they want to engage with veterans at scale to attract and retain them, you got to have a plan, okay? Understand what your community needs are and then build a plan that helps support those needs, okay? And then, use good project management techniques to plan and sustain the project and all that. You got to reach out and engage with military units in the area, if you have some, active, guard, reserve, and start to build relationships and outreach with those installations, locations, and units that might have the kind of talent you're looking for. Let's say your community needs manufacturing folks, or if it's a tech-centered place, find some place that has IT or cyber folks, so on and so forth, right? You also have to remember that the veteran population is not monolithic, okay? We all have different backgrounds, we all have different experiences. Some want to live the military life vicariously, some never want to hear about a uniform again, okay? The other thing you need to do is start having ways to engage your employers' awareness and understanding of what does a military resume look like and what do our veterans expect when they come on the job? Because all candidates have expectations for a job. Well, what do our military veterans expect? And I highlighted some of those. Remember, like any talent pool, there is no 1-800 dial a vet. It doesn't exist. I mean, you have to go out and find these folks, just like you got to find forklift drivers and chemical engineers and whatever else. And I'm going to suggest communities at state, county, local level. You need to continue to support, we'll call it the older, more tenured veterans, but you need to start some outreach for the newer veterans that are leaving service or have just left. Because quite frankly, if you get them earlier, they can potentially become more value adding members of the community over the long term. So that's just a few points that I offer.
Yeah,
And I would
that
like
makes
to
that makes.
jump in next if possible on that because
Go ahead, Gary.
some of
Then we're
Bill's
going to ask
points.
Victoria about funding, but you go ahead.
Absolutely, because some of Bill's points will translate to what I experienced in 2011. When I got out, there was a lot of well-meaning initiatives taken in my local community to help support veterans. But here I am. I thankfully, I didn't have any injuries, so did not have a disability rating. I was college educated and going to college at night. and I was doing all of the, actively doing all this stuff. All the community outreach things that were related to veterans were, hey, you can go get a haircut. Hey, you can go get some boots. And that stuff's important, but
It's
that's kind of
friendly.
yeah. And that kind of thing that did not appeal to someone like myself who was looking to become a professional in the community because my first thought is, well, I'm not about to take any resources from, the Vietnam guy on a fixed income. That's terrible. Even though, yes, I would have been able to, have some of those um, resources handed to me. But I was like, well, I'm working right now. I can do that. I can't afford this myself. So that kind of stuff did just turn me off and just
Mm.
make me think like that's not for me. So communities do need to keep this in mind. We are a humble population, and if you start giving away things like that, you all the younger veterans our first thought is, yeah, go ahead and leave that for the older people on the fixed income and, do something else. So I actually was talking to a bank recently who wants to have more veteran outreach, and I suggested to them, give out some seats to, a Columbus Crew game or something like that, soccer game. Go more in the sports direction, something that kind of appeals to larger groups of people, and folks would not feel bad about sitting in a press box versus showing up somewhere where there's going to be meals and haircuts and boots given out. So I just wanted to say that point as well to reach out to the younger veteran population.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. I mean, it gives a perspective that those of us who've never been in the military wouldn't have, right? So that perspective is really important for us to better understand. So I
Yes.
thank you for sharing that. So Victoria, can you talk a little bit about what types of funding or programming would have made the biggest difference in your journey?
So oftentimes they're people that are getting out, like he said, they have experience. Some are getting out after 4 years, some getting out after 10, some after 20. The funding of organizations such as TA reps that can work one-on-one with a veteran, helping them translate their military experience, and then partnering up with companies that want to fill it is the best way. Everyone is being slashed with funding right now, and it's a lot. It's hitting everyone, right? But like, I wish everyone had unlimited dollars and there could be an INVETS and a KY Valor and a DWD in every city and every state. I travel everywhere to military installations for people who are coming back to Indiana, right? And they're like, hey, is there one of these in Arizona? And we're like, not yet. You know what I mean? But if there was funding for it to be DoD statewide, every state had it, that would be fantastic. Because when people are getting out of the military these days versus back in the Vietnam era, they're looking to be productive and into the communities, into the economic development, and like building up where they're living and becoming a part of that community. So they're not going to just be getting out of the military and not wanting a job. They want to work, right? There's a new generation. People work a lot longer these days. So just not slashing that, and businesses partnering with us.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So Tim, you're going to round this out, and then we'll give Gary a chance at this question as well. So Tim, how can we help raise awareness among decision makers about the importance of the exit ramp for transitioning veterans?
By doing exactly what we're doing right now. Us as, let's say, if we're members of these veteran organizations that are we need to get into those economic developments, those local commerces, the big businesses, and raise awareness of these veterans that are exiting and that are transitioning, and hopefully, bring that attention to them so that they understand what they're getting, as opposed to that just that, like Bill had said earlier, that point and click veteran that they all think they are.
One
So
800 dial a vet, baby.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I feel like it is upon us as, let's say, veteran leadership within our organizations to bring that awareness to our communities. And I think we're starting by doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, Tim. Gary, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's kind of just along the lines of what Tim said. But also these decision makers, they just need to understand what they're not going to have access to. Just like Bill said, 1-800 dial a vet is not going to happen. We're not going to release, Department of Defense is not going to release a list of who's getting out of the military. That's a
Right.
national security risk. So you do have to actually go out and take steps to help find people and appeal to them if you do want to hire veterans. And you're dealing with a group of people who've had to make tough decisions. They've had to be mentors. They've had to be proficient, competent, know how to properly wear a uniform and adapt and work with different groups of people. And those kind of skills are just invaluable as opposed to someone who's, never left their hometown, lived in the same, and hasn't really traveled that much. Um, you're talking about, those are, when it comes to who's more appealing in that scenario, I mean, the veteran absolutely has a leg up when you're in, when in terms of what they bring to your organization, just with those soft skills alone. And we'll not talk about education and all that because they've had access to that as well. And nowadays, the expectation, even with enlisted ranks, is that you are going to have some form of education. So that's something else to consider nowadays. You can't make it to certain ranks nowadays without having some college. Because if you're up against somebody else who has a bachelor's degree and you're competing for that rank, they're going to go with that individual while you're out active duty service. And we all have understood that. I'm an officer now, but we all understand, that's the way the military has been changing through the years. So, yeah, we just want to say you're bringing somebody with a diverse perspective to the organization.
Yep. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. At this time, I'm going to ask anybody who's in our listening audience if they want to go ahead and put any questions in the Q&A box, and we can get through those. So as people may be doing that, let's go round robin. Give me some last thoughts about how we should be, improving the way that we're doing these transition, or your last thought on some things that maybe we didn't cover. So Victoria, I'm going to start with you.
I just want to reiterate, if you are a veteran or a spouse, make sure that you're not sending out a blanket resume to every job you're applying to. Tailor it down. Not working and looking for a job is a full-time job, right? You're going to have a lot of applications. You're going to have a lot of denials, but you will have to find that sweet spot. And if there is something that you really want to do and you find a company that you really like, look on LinkedIn and see if there is a veteran that works there. Reach out to them, ask them about it, see if you can get a inside referral to the HR person to say, hey, would you talk to this other veteran? They reached out to me through LinkedIn, and they're interested in this position. And then you can find out how that company is, right? Just take the time, take it slow, but remember that you have people out there that want to help you.
Yep, that's important. Thank you. Tim, last thoughts.
I mean, so if we have any local chambers or economic development individuals on here, reach out to your local, your VSOs, reach out to the ODVS, reach out to JVSG, reach out to your INVETs, and
Tim,
find
you
out
just
where.
used a lot of acronyms there. Can you go through with them?
I apologize.
I'm like, wait, how many was that? 3, 5? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So reach out to your Jobs for Veterans state grants, because the Jobs for Veterans is nationwide. There may be a few states that actually don't have JVSG or Jobs for Veterans state grant out there, but reach out to those organizations. They know and are actively working with veterans who are transitioning, seeking employment, or wanting to help the community grow as a whole. So, I mean, just reach out to your local organizations. That's
Yeah,
about all
that's
I got.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, right. Get the introductions going so that you can see what there is that's happening. So, all right, Gary. Last thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, to these companies, um, that again, y'all have got to take steps to just do better outreach. And of course, we're going to do what we can on our end to make sure our veterans are prepared. There's multiple steps that are being taken by Nate. When you do transition out the military, there's even laws about it that make sure that we have veterans that are prepared to get out of the military and hopefully work for your organizations. But we talked about the skills that veterans bring to the table. And another thing I didn't point out or we didn't bring up was, veterans are bold. So it's not surprising when you have like a 23 or 24-year-old who wants an appointment with the CEO to ask, how did you get here and how can I be like you when I grow up?
Mm,
So if you have a group of, and that's the expectation amongst us, that's part of our culture because our leaders, they always emphasize an open door policy. And if I want to have a meeting with one of our generals or colonels and say, how do I be like you one day? The expectation is even they are supposed to be able to take that appointment and mentor us and teach us that sort of
mhm.
thing. So when you take these when you hire veterans, just be prepared for that as well. Be prepared for potentially a loyal long-term professional relationship, hopefully.
Okay, so we did, thanks, Gary. We do have a question here. This is from somebody in the audience, Teresa Lindsay. She says, I'm in economic development and I have a great relationship with our NVETS rep. What are veterans looking for in a community to relocate to it? We just haven't had much luck getting them to land here. So what attracts them?
I can take
Opportunity.
that.
Yeah, I can take
Go,
that
go
too.
ahead, Victoria.
So, yep, I'll just start a little bit here. I don't know what city you're in. I don't think it said it in the verbiage there, but really it's all about job opportunities, schooling systems if they have kids, and cost of living, and making sure that they can, if they're going to move to that area, can they afford to live happily there? You know what I mean? Are the jobs going to pay more than $18 an hour? Because let's be honest, that's really hard to live off of these days with $18 an hour. And is it a veteran friendly work environment? Because they want to feel like it's a family where they're going to go to work at.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah,
And Bill, we didn't get your last thoughts either, but did anybody else have questions? I mean, an answer?
I can come back to those thoughts, but what are they looking for? They're looking for pretty much the same thing everybody else is. And Victoria, I totally agree with you. The other thing I think that is unique and maybe highlighted more than the general employee candidate population is they're looking for a sense of purpose and opportunity. Many of them don't want today's job, just today's job. They want to know what's the pathway to success in the longer term. Okay, so some kind of passion, purpose, mission that lines up with them, and some kind of pathway to something more than just paying the bills.
Yeah, and and even thinking about like quality of life and that kind of thing. So depending on where you are in your
Sure.
life, it's going to make a difference in what you want to be able to experience when you come out
Sure.
as well.
I was going to say too, as I go around to military installations, you all do need to keep in mind you are also competing against Florida and Texas because of the no income tax, that sort of thing. So that's something to keep in mind. I know Ohio does not have an income tax on military incomes, for example. So I'm not sure about Indiana's system, but you want to keep those sort of things in mind. Access to VA as well. And a lot of people, they keep wanting to go to Florida and Texas partially because of the weather. But I keep telling people because of the weather and the tax situation, it's like, well, one, you have a bunch of rattlesnakes and other freaky animals down there. Do you really want to deal with that? And then also, too, yeah, they may not have income tax over there, but you are paying for it on the back end somewhere. Because Florida and Texas are kind of expensive to live in. So when we're selling Ohio, we do have to make those points. Sorry, Florida and Texas, but we are kind of competing for this talent pool too. So.
Oh yeah, and along those lines, in addition to everything else I'm doing, I'm also president of our local village council, and I have worked in the economic development space for years, in and around it. They're looking for communities that have some kind of future. We live in a small town, so we put together a economic development strategy for the town that includes attraction and retention of talent. But for what? What kind of talent are we looking to get? Are we looking to advance a manufacturing, industrial kind of base? Do we want to be a tech kind of a place? If you've got veterans coming out that want to be in the tech or healthcare or some specific field, and that's not in your community, you're going to have a hard time attracting them. So you got to understand what your community, what your metro area, if you will, has to offer, and then target that offering to populations that it might be attractive to, or to which it might be attractive, however that grammar works.
We understood, Bill. Thank you. Does anybody, there aren't any more questions. Does anybody have anything else they want to add before we wrap up here?
Yeah, on those parting thoughts, those parting comments, if I could, if you're a veteran, remember to start early. The transition will happen. The uniform will come off. Start early. Focus on you. Reach out for help, because if you don't build a network, there isn't going to be one built for you. And stay strong and stay resilient. This is a long game. Okay. There are very few easy wins. For employers and community leaders, if you want to get involved in veteran hiring and employment successfully to attract and retain them, don't half step the initiative. Have a plan, have a goal, work the plan, prepare your team, your community leaders for what works in the community with veterans. Break down those biases and preconceived notions. And don't try and go it alone. Engage with individuals and organizations that have experience and expertise in the veteran space.
Very good. Anything else?
The only thing I was going to add is, yeah, in that time frame, if someone's looking for a job to move, you want to beat out those other job offers coming from those other states, right? So if you see a veteran that has potential on paper, take a chance, reach out and see if you have a better offer or option than a Florida or a Texas gives them, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're just about at the top of the hour here. So thank you all so much. This has been very informative. So Victoria and Gary and Tim and Bill, we really do thank you for your time, for helping us better understand the veterans' journey, and we thank you for your service as well. We are going to follow up with a second part, and you may see some of these faces back again, plus Kelly, who Tim mentioned earlier. So I want to thank the audience for attending as well. We hope that you're going to join us in a couple of weeks, where we will address how to make communities veteran ready beyond the friendly. So watch your social media accounts, and for more information on this, we'll make sure that we get it out as quickly as possible. So thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.